Smoke clears over the battlefields of North America. Britain has just won the greatest victory in its imperial history, crushing France, seizing Canada, claiming a continent. The colonists who fought alongside British troops are celebrating. But in the corridors of power in London, politicians are making decisions that will ignite a revolution. How did Britain's greatest triumph become the spark that would tear apart an empire? How did loyal British subjects become rebels, willing to die for independence? This is the story of how victory led to revolution. The year is 1754. Two great empires are about to collide in the forests of North America, France and Britain, each determined to control the continent's vast riches. But this isn't just about kings and queens plotting in European palaces. This is about ordinary people whose lives are about to be turned upside down. The 7 Years' War, also known as the French and Indian War, would rage for 9 brutal years, from the Ohio River Valley to the frozen battlefields of Canada. A young Virginia colonel named George Washington cut his teeth in these campaigns. Little did anyone know he was learning the military skills that would one day be turned against his own king. American colonists fought with pride alongside British redcoats. They saw themselves as loyal subjects of the crown, defending their homeland against foreign invaders. When news of victory finally came in 1763, the celebrations echoed from Boston to Charleston. Britain had won it all: Canada, the Ohio Valley, and Florida. The French Empire in North America was finished. But this triumph came with a price tag that would reshape history. By the end of the war, Britain was drowning in debt. Owing over £130 million, funds were desperately needed. New taxes were coming. For the colonists, victory in war meant a move westward. The vast, fertile lands of the Ohio Valley stretched endlessly, and it was the chance to build something new, something better. However, on October 7th, 1763, King George III signs a document that will shatter those dreams. The Proclamation of 1763, a line drawn on a map that changed everything. The West was off limits. The king's officials had their reasons. Native American tribes, led by the Ottawa chief Pontiac, had risen in rebellion. British forts were under siege, and the last thing London wanted was more warfare. But to the colonists, this felt like betrayal.
We bled for this land. Our brothers died for it. And now we can't go west? We are not free men.
Land speculators, including future founding fathers like George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, had invested fortunes in Western land claims. Ordinary families had risked everything for the promise of new opportunities. In a first act of defiance, thousands of colonists loaded their wagons and headed west. But the proclamation was just the beginning. As colonists watched in growing alarm, something unprecedented was happening in their towns and cities. British soldiers, 10,000 of them, weren't going home.
We are told they are here for our protection, but I fear a further purpose with such a show of force.
For the first time in colonial history, a large standing army was being stationed permanently in America. Officially, the troops were there for protection, to guard against Native American attacks and enforce the proclamation. Colonists were suspicious. They saw soldiers patrolling their streets, not their frontiers. They watched redcoats enforcing laws that had been ignored for decades. These weren't protectors. It was a show of force, and someone had to pay for them. The British treasury was clear. The colonies would pay for the forces stationed there. For over a century, the American colonies had enjoyed something precious: benign neglect. London was far away, and as long as trade flowed and no major rebellions erupted, colonial assemblies governed themselves. Colonists had built their own representative governments, developed their own trade networks, created their own way of life. They were proud to be British, but they were also proud to be free. That freedom was about to end. In the corridors of Whitehall, officials were horrified by what they found when they finally took a close look at their American colonies. The era of salutary neglect was over. Britain would now actively enforce every law, collect every tax, and control every aspect of colonial life. Colonists who had fought as equals beside British soldiers, bled for the same cause, and celebrated the same victory, felt like mere subjects to be controlled instead of freemen governing their own future. The stage was set for confrontation. On one side, an empire determined to control its colonies. On the other, a people who had learned to govern themselves and wouldn't give up that right without a fight. The French and Indian War was supposed to secure British rule in North America forever. Instead, it planted the seeds of revolution. The debt from victory led to taxation. The need for control led to occupation. The end of neglect led to resistance. Within 12 years of their greatest imperial triumph, the British would be fighting their own colonists in a war that would tear their empire apart. Sometimes victory is just the beginning of the story. Thanks for watching part 1 in this series. If you have enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you can be notified when new videos are published.